Hello, welcome to today's workshop. My name is Mr. Lozano and I will be facilitating you guys today. Here at this workshop we'll be discussing effective instruction for middle school ELA classrooms. So in order to not take up too much of your time, I'm going to jump right into it and get to my presentation. So if you guys have any questions, please let me know. Now, in order to start discussing what quality instruction really looks like, let's first start maybe talking about what do you usually see when you go to a good middle school ELA teacher's classroom. And here are some basics that I think are important. One of the most important aspects, I would say, that a teacher needs to establish is good classroom management, where rules and procedures have been well established in the classroom. This usually occurs at the beginning of the school year. And sometimes new teachers need a little bit of help in understanding how to set up procedures and be consistent and reteach those procedures to students. Other things that I would expect to see in a good ELA classroom or in good middle school classes in general would include lessons which are focused on the standards, motivated and engaged students, clear objectives, and high expectations. A teacher who lets their students know what they're learning and lets them know that they have high standards will get usually better achievement from their students. Also, the word rigor comes into mind. Rigorous coursework that challenges students to keep increasing their skills and knowledge while scaffolding complex tasks for developing students. So we need to make sure that it's not too hard, but that we are always pushing our students up to the next level. And sometimes that requires differentiation so you can address the needs of different students. Another thing is teachers should master their subject area and know how to clearly explain and provide specific examples. Good planning can help a teacher already think of what kind of good examples I can have prepared for the questions that my students might ask. Students should be deepening their knowledge through meaningful practice. And teachers who care about their students and develop relationships with their students are going to be much more successful. Also, those students are going to have a better rapport and more respect for those teachers as well. And finally, not only should teachers directly instruct their students through direct instruction like lectures and things like that, but also facilitate students perhaps in working on real-world problems and projects. And this is part of teachers pushing their students up into higher order thinking skills. Let's continue. One of the words that we just mentioned as well is that we want to make sure that we are challenging our students. And challenging students often becomes easier with experience. When a teacher has experience and knows certain lessons and things that work well, it becomes easier to know what to draw upon or a big toolbox of ideas. But new and struggling teachers may have a little bit of trouble in that category. So we want to provide our students with rigor. Experienced teachers may end up developing this ability, and they might be better at knowing how to scaffold and chunk activities so that students can learn at their pace and learn at their level. And so new teachers may struggle with differentiation strategies, with planning for multiple groups of students, and so it takes time sometimes to develop that. Some teachers may know how to challenge students but still fall back on easy techniques and lessons that they may be used to or the way they've always done it, and yet those teachers as well should push themselves to try to always improve their instruction and innovate their lessons. One word that we've definitely talked about and was mentioned in one of the texts that I had you guys read before you came to this workshop was that of creating a framework for rigorous teaching and learning. Now, one of the things that we could see here, or some of the things we could see, beliefs, basically intelligence is not static. All students can learn. These are beliefs that teachers should have. Teachers should have high expectations for their students, and using collaborative planning with other teachers within the school, good PLC lessons where they can learn from each other is another excellent way to continue improving your teaching and finding out what other great teachers are up to and what they do. Teachers should be monitoring student progress throughout the year as well, and gathering that information to change and direct their teaching and their lessons. teachers should be trying to teach students how to critically think. And we want students to be able to think logically, analyze, and be able to compare and contrast, and question and evaluate. These are higher order thinking skills than simply recalling. This is what rigor usually looks like. In a rigorous classroom, students are learning more of those higher order skills. Research-based instructional practices are always good, so continuing to study, learn, read academic articles that can teach teachers how to be better teachers. And a positive classroom school culture definitely helps support that, that environment in the school for good, rigorous teaching. We will be referring to the text that we have provided for all the teachers here at this workshop. You guys have a copy of Classroom Instruction That Works. It's a great resource. All participants today received a copy. We'll be highlighting some of the best strategies found in this text. One question is, or a starting point for looking at the Classroom Instruction That Works text is that you may want to think of how do you answer and cue students in classrooms. This is I don't know if you realize, but most teachers, when asked, do you cue students and ask them questions? The majority of them would say yes. It's not a secret that teachers ask students questions. In fact, as you go into teachers' classrooms, and during a recent study of 27 different thousand classroom observations, they found that 20% of teachers use the strategy of asking questions and cueing students. But are teachers really asking the right kind of questions is probably something that we should be considering. And what kind of questions are you asking your students is something you should ask yourself. The kind of questions and cues that we give our students can really have an impact on how they're learning. Intriguing and controversial questions may draw their attention at times and create class discussion. But the problem may be in that you need to stay focused on the standards and objectives that you're trying to teach students, and not just simply get lost on class discussions about controversial topics. It might be a good way to introduce a lesson, but you want to draw students back to the standards that you're trying to teach. If the goal is to help students achieve learning objectives, it's critical for the questions you ask to address what's important, to learn about a topic. Also, strategies to make your cues more effective. Use explicit cues. Explicit cues activate students' prior knowledge by bringing to mind relevant personal experiences or situations that they encounter on a regular basis. Another way to provide explicit cues is by telling students what to pay attention to as you're approaching a text or a lesson, and what to really look for in the material. Lozano addresses this important element within Domain 2, Element 8, which includes students, or says that students should be able to link prior knowledge to their new content. And cueing them in order to do so brings up their prior knowledge. Or it's a good strategy to do so. One of the ways you can. Examples of possible explicit clues that you might use within language arts. You might direct students again to look for certain words, for example, like adverbs in a text. This makes students look more directly at the text and be more engaged in the reading. Often, if you're simply listening to a recording or a reading or something, students' minds can often wander. So this is a great way to make sure that they're looking at text and paying close attention. Also, they could be looking for descriptive words in the text. You might have students identify figurative language within the text, identify similes and metaphors. This might go along with a graphic organizer, which we'll talk about in just a little bit. And also sometimes it's good to give students a specific goal in order to what they should be looking for. Perhaps look for the reactions or emotions of a character. Pay close attention, for example, if you're reading an informative essay about Mount Everest, to the details of the mountain, or to statistics or figures that they may hear in the story. These are just an example of ways that you can cue students to important information before they start studying. What kind of questions are the most effective? It's easy to ask questions that simply go along the lowest level of Bloom's taxonomy, which would be simply remembering or recalling. But these questions don't cause students to use their critical thinking skills and to go deeper. So analytical or inferential questions are better. Having students draw inferences is an excellent way to get them to go deeper into their own prior knowledge, to fill in gaps within the information that maybe is missing. You know, what else can we say? When they ask these questions, exactly, they know how to draw and fill in the blanks into the material, and this causes them again to connect their own prior knowledge and build up, you know, their understanding of the topic from what they already know. Here we have an example of how remembering is at the bottom of the Bloom's taxonomy, where creating, evaluating, analyzing are the type of skills that we want a student to eventually develop. Another way, in order to really have a more effective classroom and to really structure things in a way where students are going to get more out of the lesson, is to use advanced organizers. This helps students prepare for understanding and organizing the information before a lesson is taught, thus why they call it advanced organizers. There are 4 types that are often used. One might be expository, in which you're simply presenting written or verbal information to students, explicitly telling them what the information might be. An example of an advanced organizer like that might include something like this that I use in my classroom. Here we see an informative essay outline that really goes over all the steps of an informative essay. And this might be a great precursor to teaching students about the structure of an essay, because they can really see everything that they need to learn within the outline of the essay. Also, that's an example that I use in my own language arts classroom. Another type of advanced organizer might be like a narrative. The difference is that you're presenting the new information in the form of a short story, a video clip, or even personal stories that the teacher might share with students. Skimming is another strategy that I've used in my own classroom, and I enjoy it. One way that I can show you is that I often preview units with students. I have them look at the pictures that begin the units, and then I will ask them, for example, when I can find one, I'll show you one. But there are pictures at the beginning of the units that kind of describe some of the themes. For example, I'll ask a kid to interpret the title page, and then also skim through the stories in the unit to tell me what they think that the unit might be about. This is a great way to get kids to already start thinking about the themes and the things that they're going to be learning in the unit, and maybe even point out some things that they find interesting or they want to learn more about. Graphic advanced organizers are simply a form of graphic organizers where, again, you're presenting this ahead of time before the lesson is taught, whereas typical graphic organizers are usually done during a lesson or possibly even after a lesson. Technology cannot be, it can't be overstated how much technology can really add to the engagement of students and their motivation. And one mistake that teachers might often make is that they present students with these interesting, technological or technology, extras for their lessons after they've already taught it the standard way, when really it probably would work even better as a preview to the lessons. Online and multimedia tools can provide some really engaging ways to get students starting to think about the new content and activating their prior knowledge. Interactive multimedia can be used, for example, programs online and maybe games or online quiz programs like Quizlet might be an example of something we might use. Brain Pop is also popular here at our school. A lot of teachers would like to use the videos and the interactive games to create enthusiasm and learning in our students. Also, I tend to enjoy using video clips just to give kids a little glimpse of what the topic that we're going to be reading. Here's an example, for example, of a video clip that I might use in my classroom and I previously used. I'll just show a minute of it, but I use this video to preview an article about Stanford researchers creating a driverless car.
Stanford University.
Today we're here at Thunderhill. It's a great place to test a lot of things that you wouldn't be able to do on a normal public road. We're really exploring autonomous vehicle control right up to the limits of what these cars are capable of doing.
We're using X1, which is a completely student-built vehicle test bed platform.
So you guys get the idea. Not only one recommendation I would give you when using videos is definitely preview them beforehand and to make sure that the content is appropriate for students. Also, if you go with,